So I will call to order the July 2020 meeting of the Morrisville Planning and Zoning Board. And I'm going to move straight to the adoption of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda from your side, Michelle?
No, there are not, Chairman.
And so we'll move on then to ask our secretary to do a roll call of the members present.
Present.
Vice Chairman Langston.
Present.
Member Sack.
Present.
Member Toterai.
Present.
Michael. Member Roba.
Present.
Chairman Pritchard.
Present. Thank you. So we have a full slate of voting members. So Chris, as our alternate, will be participating but not voting. So move on to the approval of minutes. Any changes or additions to the minutes from June?
I'm sorry. Did you call for the approval of the agenda?
Thank you. I don't think we officially called for that approval. We just said that there were no changes. So we should have a vote to make sure that we can adopt the agenda. Somebody like to make a motion to do that?
This is Tim. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes, the agenda. Sorry.
So Member Toterai has made a motion to approve the agenda. Do I hear a second for adoption of the agenda? Lee has seconded that. All in favor of adopting tonight's agenda, please say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Do the roll call again.
Yes.
Bear with us while we work out these details.
Member Acharya.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Langston.
Yes.
Member Sack.
Yes.
Member Toterai.
Yes.
Chairman Pritchard.
Yes. Aye.
The agenda was approved.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to approval of the minutes. I heard no objection to the minutes or any changes, so I entertain a motion to approve the minutes from June. I see that Lee has made the motion. Do I have a second? Seconded by Tim Toterai. All in favor say aye, and we'll go through the motion again. Marty, thank you.
Member Acharya.
Yes. Aye.
Vice Chairman Langston.
Aye.
Member Sack.
Aye.
Member Toterai.
Aye.
Chairman Pritchard.
Aye. So the motion is carried. We've approved June's minutes. So now we move on to public comment. I see no one in the room who wants to make a public comment. I think, Marty, you have some written public comments.
And Secretary Saunders, I'm sorry, I received a note that you're difficult to hear. If you wouldn't mind speaking up a little. Thank you.
This is public comment in general, not public comment for the...
We received 4 comments for public comment for tonight's meeting. These comments were from Elizabeth O'Connor, Stephanie Reed, Mark Dixon, and Steve Lauderdale. All comments are in support of the approval of the renewal of the special use permit for mobile classrooms at Cedar Fork Elementary School, and all these comments will be made part of the public record. First, Elizabeth O'Connor's comment is, Cedar Forks Elementary School has mobile units with their permits about to expire. Please take swift and decisive action to ensure the units are allowed to stay in place and be used to educate Wake County Public School children. There is also a dire need of classroom space in Morrisville, and losing these spaces would adversely impact Morrisville families. Second, Stephanie Reed, 1672 Legendary Lane in Morrisville. I agree with the town of Morrisville allowing WCPSS to renew the special use permit for mobile classrooms on Cedar Fork Elementary property. Mark Dixon, I am in support of the approval for Resolution 2020-205 WCPSS to be allowed to keep seats open for students and encourage the approval to renew the special use permit for Cedar Fork Elementary School mobile classrooms. And lastly, Steve Lauderdale, I support approval of the special use permit renewal for the continuation of the WCPSS Cedar Fork Elementary mobile classrooms.
Thank you, Marty. So seeing no one in the council chambers wanting to make public comment, we'll move on to item 6. Brad, will you introduce that for us?
Sure thing. Let me switch over. So this is the Cedar Fork Elementary School Special Use Permit Renewal request. Before I get into the actual presentation, I just want to say a few things about this quasi-judicial process, and I also have our town attorney, Frank Gray, on this remote meeting call to weigh in case I misspeak or miss anything. So this is a special use permit process which is done through a quasi-judicial hearing. So essentially, it's very similar to a court process. Witnesses will be sworn in and they'll provide evidence-based testimony. If folks outside of the applicant's team here today wish to speak, they are welcome to do so. However, the applicant has the right to cross-examine those folks. In either case, whoever speaks and offers testimony, the testimony must be evidence-based, must be fact-based, it must be relevant to the 7 UDO requirements for special use permits, which you should have in your packet, as well as the mobile classroom use-specific standards in the UDO, which you should also have in your packet. Now, the burden is on the applicant to provide the evidence that proves that they meet these standards, and they will bring forward that evidence. That some of that evidence has been included in your packet as attachments. After the testimony, the board will decide if the applicant has met the standards, given the evidence that they provided. It's important to remember that board members should be essentially a blank slate. You shouldn't come here with a fixed opinion about this case. You shouldn't have a conflict of interest of any kind. There should be no direct financial gain to any of you all if this application moves forward. There shouldn't have been any non-disclosed ex parte communications outside of this hearing that occurred before today, especially with the applicant or the applicant's team. And if there was any ex parte undisclosed communications, now would be the time to disclose those. So just in general, this contrasts with legislative hearings such as a rezoning where you hear from multiple different people. Sometimes you'll have citizen input that's oftentimes based on opinions. That's perfectly fine for that to consider that in a legislative hearing, such as a rezoning, and you can even base a decision off of their input. However, in this case, it has to be strictly evidence-based. All questions should really relate to the findings, the 7 standards in the UDO and also the 4 for the mobile classroom use standards. Anything outside of that really is getting into the weeds, and we'll try to rein folks in if they veer off the course here. Frank, did I miss anything, or does that sum it up?
Brad, you've done a beautiful job. I don't have too much to add. You've handled it beautifully. I would say to the members of the board that at the end of the process, your assignment, your goal is to make a recommendation to the town council whether the applicant has met the standards, or if not, which standards they failed to meet. So the board is not granting the special use permit in this particular instance, but you'd be making a recommendation to council. But Brad's outlined the process perfectly, and you'll be hearing a lot about the UDO standards for a special use permit and then the UDO standards for a mobile classroom. And again, the applicant has the burden of bringing forward the evidence to support each of those findings. And I think in this case, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Haywood did this 4 years ago, so we've probably got an applicant who's well prepared. Thank you. That's all I have, unless you have questions, Mr. Chairman.
I don't think so. Thank you, Frank.
And I will say that we will go through those specific standards, and I will say them out loud so they're clear for the record. So I will go ahead and jump into the presentation of the case here.
If I can just interrupt for one
sure.
thing. I guess formally we should ask if there's any member who has a conflict of interest.
Yes, you should. This would be a good time to do that.
And this opportunity for perhaps Marty to swear the applicants in.
Sure, that works.
And we should probably one at a time. I know, but because we're remote, for the record, indicate our names as we go.
Okay. Say it to each one of you.
We could all, if everyone could stand and raise your right hand.
Oh, sorry. Do you affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth for evidence presented before the Planning and Zoning Board of the Town of Morrisville regarding a special use permit renewal for the continuation of Wake County Public School System Cedar Fork Elementary mobile classrooms?
I do.
Thank you, Marty. It's your night tonight. And Michelle, I don't think we had any indication of conflict of interest from any of the board.
We did not.
Didn't.
So please go ahead, Brad.
All right, thank you. So this is a request for a special use permit renewal for the continuation of the existing 7,872 square foot mobile classroom located behind the existing Cedar Fork Elementary School at 1050 Town Hall Drive. So this is something that was originally brought forward to the Board of Adjustment in 2014. It was renewed by the Town Council in 2016, but it also had they were also presented in front of the Planning and Zoning Board, which recommended approval of that renewal. This would be the third time the applicant has presented this special use permit application of some kind for this use. The last special use permit had an expiration date of June 1st, 2021, so they are trying to get ahead of that expiration date, and that is why they are here today. The subject property, again, 1050 Town Hall Drive. This is the Cedar Fork Elementary School. It's approximately a 26-acre site. However, the use in question will zoom in closer to where that exactly is on the premises. It is zoned office and institutional. And the actual mobile classroom, you'll see, is situated behind the main structure, this white building on the screen here. For reference, this is Town Hall Drive. This is Church Street. Cedar Fork Elementary is right here. The applicant has also provided some photographs of what that mobile unit looks like from both the outside and inside, in case you were curious to see what they actually look like on the ground. And as promised, these are the 7 special use standards found in our UDO. These are what the evidence will be trying to address. You will determine whether or not the applicant meets these standards, and I'll read them individually here. The proposed development will not materially endanger the public health or safety. The proposed development will comply with all regulations and standards generally applicable within the zoning district and specifically applicable to the particular type of special use. The proposed development will not substantially injure the value of adjoining property or is a public necessity. The proposed development will be in harmony with the intensity, scale, and character of development existing or planned in the surrounding area. The proposed development will not cause undue traffic congestion or create a traffic hazard. The proposed development will not generate the need for transportation, water, supply, sewage, disposal, fire and police protection, and similar public services that cannot be adequately handled by available infrastructure and facilities. The proposed development will be consistent with the comprehensive plan. We also have 4 use-specific standards in the UDO for mobile classrooms. Those use-specific standards are: mobile classrooms shall be used only as temporary expansion of classroom space pending implementation of definite plans for the permanent expansion of classroom space or alternative means of meeting growing classroom needs. Mobile classrooms shall not be placed within existing required landscaping or perimeter or street yard buffer areas or areas designated on approved development plans for future landscaping, perimeter and street yard buffers, open space, or vehicular access. All permits required by applicable building, electrical, plumbing, and mechanical codes shall be obtained before placement of the mobile classroom on the site. There shall be a plan in place for the rapid evacuation of the mobile classrooms in case of severe weather or other natural or man-made disasters. Staff recommendation, so if you hear this evidence and you find that the applicant meets all of those criteria, staff recommends approval with 2 conditions. First condition would be the development should continue to comply with the mobile classroom temporary use standards per UDO section 445B4 that were effective during the previous special use permit renewal on July 26, 2016. The second condition, the mobile classroom shall be maintained in substantial conformance with the testimony and evidence presented. Last slide just talks about how there is officially a comment session. It looks like we front-loaded some of those comments, even though they were registered for the general comment session. They had a lot to do with this particular item. The recommendation to Town Council, Frank Gray touched on this earlier. You will either approve as submitted, approve with conditions, recommend approval as submitted, recommend approval with conditions, or recommend denial of the application. Since this is a quasi-judicial hearing, you will have to base that decision on the findings of fact. Staff has provided you all with some possible phrasing of how you could carry out one of those 3 actions. And that is it for me. And what I'm going to do, since we've already sworn in, and there is no conflict of interest or ex parte communications disclosed, I'm going to hand it over to the applicant, and turn on the board deliberations screen here.
Thank you, Brad.
Chair, thank you very much. My name is Kenneth Haywood. I am an attorney with the law firm of Howard Stallings in Raleigh. I have been representing the Wake County Board of Education in the school system for over 20 years at this point in time, and I'm pleased to be before you tonight. Let me begin by just saying a thank you. I want to say a thank you to the board for appearing both in person and remote. I want to thank the staff, Michelle, Brad, and all the other members that are here tonight. I realize that this is an accommodation you're making for the school system for reasons that I'll explain in a minute, but I do appreciate your having us on your agenda in this partial in-person, partial virtual environment, and we appreciate everyone working with us sincerely to do that tonight. We're certainly in uncharted territory with these type of hearings, and I appreciate everyone working forward so we can actually present this application for you. So first of all, thank you. The second thing I'll say is that Brad and Michelle Stiegel and the town manager have all been extremely helpful to work with, as they always are. It is always a pleasure to come before this town, both your planning and zoning board as well as your staff. Everyone is always very willing to work and try to achieve the best result that is in the best interest of the town. As Brad has mentioned, this is not my first rodeo, so to speak, before this board in terms of this particular matter. As your esteemed counsel, Frank Gray, has told you, I was here a few years ago in 2016. We did at that point in time have unanimous approval by the Planning Commission of a recommendation to the town council and the elected officials. At that time, it was a 5-year condition for us to be able to sort of see where we are. And the reason why we're back here tonight, and the reason why we asked to see if we could have this presentation tonight in July, is that if in the unfortunate situation that there was not an ability to keep this 8-classroom modular at Cedar Fork, it takes the school system approximately a year to be able to move this type of modular unit off the campus. That also includes the work that Marcella Rory, who is seated to my left, who is with us tonight, and her team have to deal with in terms of what that has to do with assignment for the seats that are lost on the campus. And so it is a major undertaking to have to displace seats at any school, and particularly here at Cedar Fork, where it is a capped school in terms of the seats. And so that is why we're here before you, even though it's June of 2021 and when it expires, that we're here before you tonight to be able to begin this process as your UDO requires. We have submitted as part of our application a statement of justification and also proposed findings of fact. I will consider that those are part of the record and will be part of the record for your consideration tonight in terms of why we're applying and what we consider, how we consider that we have met each of the required findings of fact on the UDO, the special requirements in terms of the fact that this is a mobile unit. The presenters with me tonight are 2 individuals. We are limited to 3, and so we did not bring in Principal Stone, who was the principal at the time that we were before you back in 2016 and again tonight. But we will be able to, in her absence, cover the information that she would have had that been necessary. But to my left is Marcella Rory. Marcella will introduce herself and her qualifications and her expertise to speak on the subject matter that she's here before us tonight. I also have to my right Nate Boquin, who is with Ramey Kemp, who is a traffic engineering firm in the Triangle area, who has been involved with Cedar Fork for many, many years and has provided the initial report to staff in terms of their observations in terms of how the site meets the necessary queuing and stacking for the site. And then they have recently, as well, for this particular hearing tonight, have updated that report by a letter that was dated May 18 of 2020 to Clint Council, who is an employee of the Wake County School System, which has been submitted with the original report to staff and, again, would be part of the record for tonight's hearings. Nate, seated to me to my right, will speak as to one particular condition, a finding of fact that needs to be satisfied, and he will give his qualifications at the necessary time to be able to meet his expertise for that. As Brad has indicated, and I will not necessarily repeat the site location and the specifics in terms of the particular school site, I do want everyone to note, for those that are members of the planning board that maybe were not with us back in 2016, that when this modular unit was originally brought onto Cedar Fork's campus, it is an 8-classroom modular unit. The town at that point in time required that we do some aesthetic modifications to make this look as blended into the campus as possible. If you were to ever see this modular, or if you have seen it, you'll see that it is basically covered in stucco from the ground all the way up to the roof of the modular unit. It is in the very far reaches of the campus and is in a place that cannot be seen from Town Hall Drive and really cannot be seen from any of the adjacent property owners unless you're immediately behind the site of where this is located. So it blends in very nicely with the campus based on the aesthetic requirements that were built and added to the site at the time that it was necessary, and has continued to be in the same condition with whatever repairs and maintenance are necessary through the years that it's been on the campus. And so while it is on campus, unless you have a specific reason to be on campus with a student or for a program, you would never even know that it exists. So that is where A little bit of background about this particular modular unit. In general, 30,000-foot view perspective, this modular unit is critical for the town of Morrisville, in particular Cedar Fork Elementary School, to remain. We will be giving you some data tonight about what the populations look like right now in this region of the county. And given the fact that this, we have two issues that Marcella Rory will be talking to you about in addition to others. One, we have legislation that was unexpected by the North Carolina General Assembly a few years ago that reduced the number of elementary students that can attend any particular classroom. So as we've been coming before you on this particular application over the years, we've had some unfortunate events occur that we simply had no control over. One being the fact that the legislation limited the number of students per class. So therefore, that requires us to find even more classroom seats than ever before. And the second part of that is the school system has absolutely no control over the incredible rapid growth that continues in this area of the county. This continues to be a incredibly popular area for young families to move to and to live in large part, I'm sure, because of the way the town of Morrisville governs and the town of Morrisville in terms of what it provides for its population. And so as a result of that, we continue to build new schools in this area, but as soon as they are built, they are capped. And so over the years, as I've been coming before this board and the town council, they've been asking about us adding additional capacity in terms of permanent schools, which we have been doing and which we will highlight for you tonight. And unfortunately, that's not keeping up with the population. And so as a result of that, Cedar Fork has since 2008, I believe, been a school with a capped population, and that continues now through 2020. And that is just an outgrowth of the movement of the population into this area and the school system having to adjust as best as it can. And so every available seat is absolutely necessary for not only Cedar Fork, but in terms of this particular region. We will not necessarily get into a discussion tonight because it's not necessarily part of the findings of fact in terms of how we are dealing with COVID-19 and what the Wake County Public School System or what the governor of the great state of North Carolina may do in terms of schools all across North Carolina. But we are certainly aware that that certainly is impacting all schools across North Carolina, and it again is having the school system to look to available space, because if we're going to have not 6 feet, but more than 6 feet for students, if that is one of the requirements, then if we're going to spread out students, then we need more seats. And so again, from that standpoint, in terms of where we are tonight, that is an additional reason why seats are absolutely critical for this campus. So with that said, let me go through some of the application for the special use permit. As we've indicated, this is a 7,872 square foot modular classroom, which has been in continuation on this campus for many years. We are permitted as of right within the zoning district for this particular site, but we are required, because it is a modular unit, to obtain the special use permit. The Morrisville Unified Development Ordinance does require that there are to be 7 general findings of fact, which I would like to go over with you. The first finding of fact is that the proposed development will not materially endanger the public health or safety. Our response to that finding of fact is that the development here is a modular classroom to be used as education space for elementary age school children. It is on an existing campus for elementary children in an elementary school. It will not endanger any of the public health or safety. It has been it's been on this campus since we first became before this board back more than 6 years ago, and will continue to be in the same use as it has been during that period of time. And during the continuation of being on the campus, there's not been any evidence that we've been engaged in any type of endangerment to the public health or safety. Number B, the proposed development would comply with all regulations and standards generally applicable within the zone district and specifically applicable to this particular type of special use. And our evidence to support that is that when the modular unit was originally constructed, it was required to go through the same type of inspections and permitting process that a brick and mortar school would. It went through those inspections by both the town and the county of Wake. It met all of the local, state, and federal ordinances and regulatory improvements, including but not limited to the town's UDO, the North Carolina Building Code, and ADA legislation. We received all the required permits, including a certificate of occupancy, also known as a CO, at the time of its opening, and that continues to be in effect as of today. The third criteria is the proposed development would not substantially injure the value of adjoining property or is a public necessity. Here, our evidence is the fact that the mobile unit is a public necessity. I would like to, at this point in time, recognize Marcella Rory, who is with us, who is an employee of the Wake County Public School System. And if I could, I'm going to ask Ms. Rory a couple preliminary questions, and then at that point in time, allow her to provide some information to you about why this is a public necessity. First of all, Ms. Rory, could you please give to the board how many years you've been an employee with the Wake County Public School System?
Actually, I will have been an employee with Wake County Public School System 23 years next month. Previously, I was the Director of Planning and Design, and also prior to that time, a Senior Facility Planner. I have been in the role of Senior Director of Long Range Planning for the last several months, so that was a great promotion. I enjoy working for the school system.
And have you, are you a graduate of any university or college?
Yes, I have 2 degrees in architecture from NC State University. I have a Bachelor of Environmental Design in Architecture, 1994, and I have a Bachelor of Architecture from NC State in 2002.
And in your previous capacities with the school system and your current capacity with long-range planning, do you have the necessary training, experience, and information with the data produced for and by the school system to be able to speak on the topics you're going to speak on tonight?
I do.
And briefly, when you talk about long-range planning and growth for the school system, I'm sure there are many different things that come under that title. Could you just give a short version of some of the type of things specific to what we're talking about tonight in terms of long-range planning and growth that would be applicable to what you're going to speak on tonight?
Some of the information that we provide is a facility utilization report. Basically, that gives information on how every single classroom on a given campus is used, what it's used for, how many students can be in each of those rooms. And we provide that information, and the Board of Education uses that anytime there are requests for transfers, anytime there's a request for a student to be grandfathered at a certain campus, anytime we're looking at needing to cap enrollment. Sorry, I got distracted there. Sounded like thunder. Sorry about that. But anytime we need to look at capping the enrollment at a particular school, that information is utilized in making those decisions.
And I would like to, if you wouldn't mind, give to the board, because there's been in the past, and I'm sure now in 2020, an understanding of exactly why this modular unit is necessary at Cedar Fork, why this is a public necessity as to the requirements under their findings of fact. So if you could give some information so that everybody on the board can understand exactly what we are facing right now in this particular region of the county. Certainly.
As Mr. Haywood mentioned a little while ago, this is a heavily growing or a fast-growing area, and for the reasons that he has mentioned earlier, there are currently no additional plans for new schools in this planning region for the upcoming 7-year rolling CIP capital improvement program. However, since we first came to you with the request to get a special use permit for this modular unit on the Cedar Fork campus, we have actually opened a total of 3 new elementary schools in this planning region. We opened White Oak Elementary School in 2016. We opened Hortons Creek Elementary School in 2017, and we opened Parkside, which is a multi-track year-round school, in 2018. So we recognize the need for additional seats in this area and have worked diligently to continue adding seats in this planning region. However, as Mr. Haywood mentioned, I think a few minutes ago too, we have cap schools in this planning region, and it's because of the extraordinary growth. So if you look at the number of schools, elementary schools we have in this planning region, 7 out of 14 of those have had to be capped. So if we're looking at Cedar Fork Elementary School, we have a capacity in the brick and mortar building of 508 students. And with the membership, if we're looking at a membership of 846 students, that would have our percent crowding at 166.5%. However, when we look at having the ability to use the 8-classroom modular unit, that brings our school and trailer capacity up to 668 students, which drops our percent crowding down to 126.6% crowding at that elementary school. But to go back and look at the number of schools within this planning region, the majority of them are over 100% crowding. So anytime we are at risk of losing seats at any of those schools, it affects the crowding at all of those schools. Mr. Haywood mentioned a second ago, too, that there were also legislative changes that were beyond our control. Basically, the legislature reduced the number of students that you could have in each classroom from K through grade 3. So instead of being able to have 21 students in a kindergarten classroom, you could now only have 18. First grade, instead of 21, you can now only have 16. Second grade, instead of 21, you now have 17. And third grade, instead of 21, you now have 17. So if you do the math and look at how many students we have removed per classroom, that creates a lot of challenges for the number of students you can have at a particular school, because you're looking at both the brick and mortar and also the modular units with those number changes. And I think I'm running.
You're good.
Running rampant
So,
here.
final question for you. If this 8-classroom modular unit was required to be removed, if this board or the town council does not renew our application to be able to keep this, would children then would you have enough seats for the number of students that would normally be attending this school?
We would not based off of the projected membership as of 6/29/20, which was the 846. We would not have enough students in the brick and mortar to be able to handle that number of students.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I would, given the qualifications, the degree, and the experience and training Ms. Rory would be tending her as an expert witness for the testimony that she's provided tonight. The next finding of fact is D, which is the proposed development will be in harmony with the intensity, scale, and character of the development existing or planned in the surrounding area. For that, our evidence of fact that the modular classroom was constructed in a manner to blend into the existing campus and site plan. It is in harmony with the scale, bulk, coverage, density, and character of the neighborhood. And as we've indicated before, it is located behind the elementary school. It is a part of the campus. It is not something that would be in any way a objectionable in terms of its intensity scale or character within the school campus. The next item is that the proposed development would not cause undue traffic congestion or create a traffic hazard. As we've indicated before, this school has been with this modular campus for many, many years and is in continuation as of today. We have with us tonight, as I've indicated, an engineer with Ramey Kemp and Associates, Nate Boquin. I'm going to ask him some preliminary questions for his testimony on this topic. Could you please indicate to the board whether you have completed any years of a college or university?
Yes, I have a bachelor's degree from NC State University in civil engineering.
And do you hold any licenses?
I'm licensed professional engineer in the state of North Carolina.
And you are currently employed with Ramey Kemp and Associates, is that correct?
That's correct.
And Ramey Kemp and Associates performs what type of services?
Traffic and transportation services.
And are you familiar with the report that was prepared by Ramey Kemp back in May 23 of 2016?
I am.
And have you reviewed that report?
I have.
And have you also reviewed a letter that was written from Ramey Kemp on May 18th of 2020?
I have.
And based on that information, is there anything that Ramey Kemp has found in preparation for today's hearing that would be different than what has previously been provided to staff and to the board?
There's not.
And part of that, in looking at the findings as summary on page 3 of the report, does it not say that the existing student population, as is expected, that no additional changes are necessary to accommodate the conditions on the site?
That's correct.
All right. Do you have anything further you would like to add?
I'm not.
All right. So based on that testimony, I would tender Mr. Boquin is an expert in the field of traffic engineering reporting and studies with Ramey Kemp and Associates Incorporated firm, and believe that his testimony satisfies the fact that the proposed development, which is the continuation of the modular units, will not cause any undue traffic congestion or traffic hazard. The next finding of fact is that the proposed development will not generate needs for transportation, water supply, sewage disposal, fire, police protection, and similar public services that cannot be adequately handled by available infrastructure. And as we're all aware, the modular classroom is already connected to water and sanitary sewer services. It is appropriately located with respect to the transportation facilities, water supply, and fire and police protection and similar facilities. There is existing infrastructure to handle the continuation of this modular unit at the Cedar Fork campus to meet the needs of the elementary age children. The last of the general findings of fact is that the proposed development will be consistent with the comprehensive plan, and the town of Morrisville land use plan designates the subject parcel as public institutional. As such, the modular classroom conforms to the comprehensive plan and the official plans adopted by the town. So those are the general findings of fact that are required. There are, as have been mentioned by staff, 4 additional use-specific standards pursuant to Article 4, and those are as follows. Number 1, that the modular classrooms will be used only as a temporary expansion of classroom space pending implementation of definite plans for the permanent expansion of classroom space or alternate means of meeting growing classroom needs. As we've already indicated, that in order to legally meet the current enrollment at Cedar Fork Elementary School, we must maintain the current number of instructional spaces at the school, which include the 8 classroom modular units. I will assure this board and will be saying the same to the town council that everyone with the Board of Education is aware of this modular unit. We're aware of this as something that has been here on this campus for many years, that but for the fact that the schools that we built, which we believe to be able to alleviate any need for this modular unit, were not capped almost immediately after they were put on site, we wouldn't be here tonight. But unfortunately, as soon as we build a site and we build a school for elementary school children, we have a situation where we are tonight. And so it is not for lack of trying. It is the fact that we are constantly having to chase development and population trends that we have no control over. And so from that standpoint, we recognize that this is under UDO defined as a temporary use and seek the request after we come up for the 5-year review period to continue this as an additional modular campus for the future. The second finding is that the modular classroom shall not be placed within existing required landscaping, perimeter, street yard buffer areas, or areas designated or approved development plans for future landscaping, perimeter, and street yard buffers. It is situated, the current campus classroom building is currently situated outside any of those above areas. So therefore, we comply with this additional requirement since we're not in any designated areas or buffer required areas of the site. C, that all permits are required by the applicable building, electrical, plumbing, and mechanical codes are obtained before placement. As previously indicated, we have a certificate of occupancy for this particular modular unit. And finally, that there will be a plan in place for the rapid evacuation of the modular classrooms in case of severe weather or other natural or man-made disasters. For that, I will turn it over to Ms. Rory again and ask her the question, does the school system have in place a plan at Cedar Fork for the evacuation of students in the modular classroom in the event that there's any weather or natural man-made disaster?
We do.
And has that been in existence during the time period that we have had the modular unit and we've been applying for these approvals before the town board?
It has.
All right. So with that, we believe that we have met the 7 or the required findings of fact, along with the special findings of fact. We are certainly here tonight to answer any questions that any of the board members have regarding this. But in conclusion, we request that that this board recommend approval of the continuation of the modular unit at Cedar Fork Elementary School to the town council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Haywood. So this time is an opportunity for the board to make any questions or comments concerning any of the 7 findings and the 4 additional findings. I think we need to constrain ourselves to those topics. So I'm going to ask if you have a comment or a question on those, if you would indicate through the chat, and then Michelle will let me know. Vice Chairman Lee Langston, go ahead.
Sorry, I had to turn off my phone. Certainly we don't, I'm not in favor of depriving classroom space of the area. We know that we need it. There was a couple of differences in some of the numbers that were cited percentage-wise. You were saying 166, it says 127 in the application, and 126 if the classroom stay versus 107. So I guess my question is, what are the correct numbers, or is it even worse than what was originally stated? Has there been a change? And I've got a couple more. I don't know if you want me to continue with that or wait for a response.
Let's go ahead and perhaps ask Ms. Rory.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, and if I may, thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chairman, for that comment. I believe that Ms. Rory is going to tell you that the numbers we have now are more current than what was presented at the time that we presented this application, because I can't remember the exact date that we presented this application to staff, but it was some time ago as we've been trying to work through how we were going to actually have this hearing, because this hearing has needed to be delayed because of the fact of not being able to have, in-person hearings, but I'll let Ms. Rory directly answer that.
And that is correct. This is actually the comment I made the other day was this is more live than it has ever been. Typically, we'd have a drop-dead point where we'd stop adjusting numbers, but because our schools right now are having to adjust for, as Mr. Haywood mentioned earlier, some of the other legislative changes dealing with social distancing, also all of the numbers changing as far as which students are going to enroll, which ones are going to do homeschooling, and all the other myriad of potential changes. But we are actually running this document daily right now, so this is a more current number.
So I guess the question on that, you had said 846 is the current enrollment. The document that states that 127 would be the worst case says that the enrollment is 851, which is more. So I just didn't know if there was a mistake or what. I guess what are the correct numbers is what I'm looking at.
Our,
I mean, you're talking about different. Maybe it's a different number than what you have in the application.
Oh, I'm sorry. The number that I'm showing as of 6/29 of 20 was 846 as the projected enrollment. The school capacity in the brick and mortar building is still 508. The percent crowding would be at 166.5. With the 8 classroom modular classroom 8 classrooms in the modular unit, our school capacity would be 668, and then the percent crowding would be 126.6.
Okay, I guess I would just refer you back to the document that you submitted. The numbers are different in there.
I apologize for any confusion there.
Right. So I guess the question was that at the time that we submitted the document for the numbers, they had indicated that the current enrollment was
a little bit higher, I think.
Was 851 students, I believe. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I'm just going right. But in section C, it just mentions 127% capacity as the worst case instead of 166. And I just want to make sure that we're talking about the true correct numbers here, that we're basing this decision on numbers that are correct.
It's the 166.5. That's actually in the brick and mortar building. Once you've added the additional 8 teaching spaces in the 8 classroom modular unit, then you have additional capacity for more students. So that's how it drops down to the 126.6. I think you may have shown 120.
Right. What I'm saying is that the number 166 and 126 are not shown in the document you submitted. The numbers you submitted are 127 and 107.
That is what they existed as of the time we submitted this information, and as we've indicated tonight, we're presenting to you what the numbers are that we have as of
6/29.
6/29. That's why there's a discrepancy between the two numbers.
Either way, it's just the numbers you're stating don't jive with the numbers that are in the document you're submitting, and it's including the number of students. I mean, this is a higher number of students, and you're coming out with different numbers. I mean, the math is what the math is. So I guess what's the true math is my question.
So I think we.
So maybe by the time you talk to the council, you can go back and look at the document and maybe get more updated on it.
So Lee, I think you had a second point as well.
Well, I guess I've driven by there before, and I know, because it's been a while since I've had this problem, but there are definitely times in which traffic is backing up into Town Hall Drive, and there are definitely times in which there are cars parked all around there creating congestion. So I'm not sure. I mean, it's great that they've added the double stacking lanes, but there's certainly still traffic issues, I believe, there at that intersection that aren't really reflected. Maybe the people aren't moving through as fast enough. I don't know, but anything that could be done to help move that so that the issue is not backing up into the street, of course, would be a good safety measure as well.
We can certainly look at it. I think part of that, and we've discussed this a few years ago as well, is part of that is also driven by parents and how parents choose to be able to get to the school, whether they're trying to walk across Town Hall Drive and therefore impede the natural flow of traffic, because they're trying to walk to the campus, which is certainly, not something that would be discouraged, but because of the way that parents sometimes bring their children to campus, we can't necessarily, forecast every single way that they're trying to access the campus and whether they are, in fact, coming and going as they're required to on campus, because all parents aren't necessarily going to, do the same as all other parents. And so a lot of that is just simply the way that some parents drive compared to others as they're coming onto the campus and leaving the campus.
Right, and I think that some of the parents don't park in the carpool lane because they probably take so long, they figure they can short circuit it and be faster.
Well, that's also, you're exactly right. A lot of parents, it's natural of any parent to try to see how quickly they can come in and leave and not necessarily get in a carpool lane. And then, like you said, is that then creates issues for the rest of the queuing of the traffic.
And I guess the only other question I have is, a couple of these statements are at odds. I mean, there's the one section that talks about there's no plans for the next 7 years in this area. And then there's another section in which it states that you have to have concrete plans in place to have, get the special use permit for the temporary units. So I guess, there's nothing we can really do about that. It is what it is, but they're definitely sort of at odds with each other.
If I may clarify, my comment about the 7-year rolling capital improvement plan, that had to do with brand new schools, major renovations and such. It did not touch on whether or not we were moving mobiles or not moving mobiles. But now that we're discussing that, one of the other issues that we have are currently experiencing is that the cost of moving mobiles has really gone through the roof. So we have to be a little bit more select in which mobiles need to be relocated, which ones we're pulling off a site, or where we're adding additional mobiles to a campus. But the rolling capital improvement plan that's updated annually, and it's a 7-year plan, has to do with the brick and mortar, brand new schools, renovations. There is a line in that CIP that deals with trailer movement.
And part of that as well is, I know from speaking with the senior director of real estate services with the school system that they are always looking for land, whether it be the east, west, north, or south portions of this county. And as they find land, they will acquire it and build the schools, as Ms. Rory has indicated. And so at this point in time, they are certainly searching to see if there's 20 to 30 acres of land for a new elementary school, but right now that's not been able to be identified to be able to accommodate the crowding issues at Cedar Fork. And so that was part of the comment, but that does not necessarily mean that we are not doing everything we can to see if we can acquire it.
Okay. I mean, the statement is just there's definite plans for permanent expansion of classroom space, and it doesn't mention about moving mobiles. I definitely understand. I do think it's a little funny that it's continually surprising that there's massive growth in Western Wake. I mean, I think in the last 20 years or so, hopefully they'll eventually, get ahead of it. I don't know. I was born here, and it's pretty much never been ahead of the curve, even since 1975. So, maybe it's too much to expect that they would get ahead of the curve now.
Thank you, Lee. I think Member Tim Toterai has a question. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, it's in a similar vein to Lee, but I guess the question, the sticking point for me is around the definition of temporary that we're using here, because I think you guys did a great job of articulating the need. I think that's clear and clearly understood. The question that we have is even moving forward, sounds like we're already over capacity even with this modular unit. So, my question is, are we going to be back here addressing the same issue the next go round, or are there plans that can be addressed within just this particular site to either drive towards more permanent solution and then expanding to meet the need at that particular site? So wanted to see if you can address that outside of the 7 years, because I do have that same concern around if there's nothing on the books, brick and mortar, 7 years, what are the other solutions to get us out of temporary as a definition?
Thank you for your question. As I mentioned earlier, that since the time frame that we came for the first special use permit, we have actually opened 3 schools in this area. Typically, when an elementary school opens for the first year or so, it's not at full capacity because most parents don't want to move their children once they're in the 4th and 5th grade. They want them to stay at the school that they're currently located at. So Parkside, which was the newest one that we had open, we will be able to gain some additional seats there. However, as fast as in all the apartment complexes that I saw en route here to Town Hall tonight, with that amount of growth, I don't know that it would still be able to grant that amount of relief to Cedar Fort. But as Mr. Haywood mentioned, and as our Senior Director of Real Estate Services, we are constantly searching for property here, there, and yonder.
Thank you.
And Member Acharyu, Sanjay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. So this 846 is a 2020 number, right?
Would you mind
The
repeating?
enrollment of 826, the 846 is for 2020, correct?
Correct. That's our projected enrollment. But as I mentioned earlier, too, there's right now no guarantee on what that number is going to look like.
No, it could be plus or minus 10%, 15% difference. Could you tell me what is the projected number in the next 5 years?
I do not have that information with me. But
Okay.
for most of our schools are, I'm sorry.
Could you give me an estimation, given you are in long-term planning, long-term range planning? You are in 2020. I hope you have a plan for the next 5 years.
And
you know the plus minus.
Understood. The board's goal is to try to reduce the number of students at all of the schools, but I don't have the 5-year numbers here with me. I apologize.
Okay. So you can see the frustration that we all are dealing with, right? I don't see that you have met, or I don't see that you have met the 4.4.5.b.4 UDO's requirement that says that you need to have a plan in place to replace the temporary ones with permanent ones, right? You can cite all the examples of what you have done for the last 7 years. But here we are talking about the next 5 years. So I'm looking for a plan to address the next 5 to 7 years. Right? So that I don't see in your application that you have submitted. And you don't even have numbers to tell me what it would look like in the next 5 years.
So if I may jump in, I think Sanjay is looking at the use-specific standard that says the proposed development will not be used only as temporary expansion. I'm sorry, we get that right.
Yeah, the mobile classroom shall be used only as temporary expansion of classroom space pending implementation of definitive plans. So the word definite, right, is important for the permanent expansion of classroom space or alternate means for meeting growing classroom needs. Right, so I'm looking at the 2 parts, right? What's the growth expected? And number 2, what's the definitive plan to address that growth?
The plan of the school system, to be able to answer your specific question with regarding what is the plan for expansion of classroom space in this particular region of the county or meeting the classroom needs is what we've indicated, and that is that we have continually sought to be able to buy more land and build more schools, which is what we have been doing all these years, which is what we promised the board that we would do when we first came before the board in 2014, and what we have done to satisfy that, and what our commitment is tonight is that is an ongoing process. It is not stopping. We are continuing to be able to find available land, to be able to have funding from the county, to build additional elementary schools in this section of the county, to be able to meet the board's goal of removing children on an appropriate schedule out of temporary classrooms into brick and mortar spaces. And so the plan that we present to you tonight is the fact that that is a stated goal of the board. And as we are able to find land to be able to do that, we will do it. I will indicate to you that for any of you, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. What you are saying is a statement, not a plan. Right? We can all say a lot of things, but that does not necessarily translate into a plan. Right? A plan means, by this is how I'm going to raise funds. This is how I'm going to go look for land. This is the time frame I'm going to do certain things. That's all a plan, right? Not a statement of fact that, okay, we'll keep trying. Keep trying is not a plan.
Well, if I may clarify also, the 7-year capital improvement plan, there are several schools that are listed on that right now that literally we're still searching for the land for it. So the idea that we don't have a plan is, I would take slight issue with that. We do. The question is, as soon as we can get that property purchased, then we will have additional seats. Now, one of the things that you have to keep in mind is that if that property is not able to be purchased in this general area, then that leads to reassignment again. So that's a conversation that we're continuously having with different subdivisions. Excuse me, and as I mentioned on my way here today, the number of apartment complexes that are still going up. So there is a plan. It's just until we are able to secure land to put with these, then that's still the challenge. So there is a plan to relieve crowding overall. It's just there is a domino effect with student assignment.
Well, that's precisely the reason I asked you about the percent, when you do long range planning, you do look at what's the growth rate that is happening. And as Lee pointed out, the growth rate is well known. It's not a new phenomenon, right? Plus, I'm not looking for exact numbers either, right? I'm trying to understand when you are planning, that means you should probably have an estimate that in the next 5 years, this area is going to go up by 20%. Which essentially means that I need to have a XYZ number of schools for middle school, high school, whatever they are ready in so and so time. So that's what I'm looking for, right? And just a line item on a CIP plan with no investment dollars associated with it is not a plan.
Actually, the plan that I referenced a second ago, there are dollars associated with each of these. The problem is there's no land yet associated with those.
Would you mind submitting that plan along with the application? Because I have not seen that plan.
Certainly. And I believe it's available online as well, but yes.
Yeah, but as part of the application, we should submit it so that you can demonstrate that you have met that criteria. Right now, without that document, we can't certify, right? Just on a website doesn't necessarily mean it's an executable document. So, it kind of is a domino effect, right? So, do you have any plans to expand then beyond the one current trailer to more than one trailer then?
I'm sorry, the plan to expand at Cedar Fork?
Yeah.
That is not our plan currently. And we had a long conversation about that in my previous life a few months ago in facility planning. One of the things that you have to look at is how do you get construction traffic on and off of a campus? As you are aware, there's a single entrance drive for both buses and cars coming off of Town Hall Drive. If we were to attempt to try to do construction on that site, there's not a swing space, there's not a school with enough capacity to be able to pluck all of the students that currently attend Cedar Fork and move them to a swing space location. And because there's not a place to actually relocate that entire population, you would be looking at doing construction on a fully occupied site. So if you're looking at having one entrance where buses and cars are coming in and our carpool, which we just talked about a few minutes ago, and then having to bring construction traffic through that at the same time, that would create some substantial challenges, not to mention the fact that looking at your impervious surface counts on that campus, adding additional footprint would begin to jeopardize that. Also, the current rules and regs requiring your BMP devices for stormwater management, that takes up part of your site. So you're subject to what the current regulations would be on that campus. So whereas we might go in and say we would love to add an additional 10,000, 15,000 square feet, the difficulty in being able to literally construct it would be the first issue. But the second would be whether or not we would legally be able to do that given the current footprint of the existing building and also the stormwater requirements.
Okay, so maybe this is a question for Brad or Michelle is, if approved, does this mean that they can add one provided all these logistical issues are sorted out, or are they limited to having one?
As stated earlier, it is a permitted use. They would have to go through, this special use permit is only for this in particular mobile classroom. So I imagine if they wanted to add another one, they'd have to go through a separate special use permit process. But it is allowed, since this site is zoned office and institutional, it is allowed technically. But the applicant has not informed us of any plans of doing that.
Okay. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sanjay. And Member Sack, Kenneth, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to continue a little bit with the discussion we've been having about capacity and student population. Hopefully the governor's going to announce a plan to reopen the schools soon so that the schools can prepare. A couple of plans that are floating around involve students attending campus for 1 week and then remote learning for the next 2 weeks. And I'm just curious, if that plan is in effect, how does that affect the need for the mobile units for at least the time that the policy is in effect?
You would still need to have the modular units in use at that campus. I was able to talk with the principal, Ms. Stone, prior to coming here, and even with the social distancing plan in place, we are still anticipating needing all of those classrooms for first grade will be in the majority of them.
Okay.
So, sorry.
No, go ahead. Finish your response.
Oh, no, I was just simply going to say that even with reducing the number of students that are on campus, you still have to reduce the number of students that are in each class. So that's where you come at our, that's where the rub is, basically.
Okay. I have a couple of questions regarding the first condition, which is public safety. And my question is more focused on the safety of the students in those units. So the first one, assuming that we recommend that you get the special use permit and that the council approves it, you probably won't be in front of the board for a few more years. And so my question is simply, what is the lifespan of these types of mobile units and how are they maintained?
Our maintenance and operations department is charged with the maintenance of units that we own, and then the companies that we lease units from, then I can't remember right now if we are still sending that through our maintenance and operations through Maximo work orders and then having that company do the renovation, or if we are still handling those. I'd have to get that information and get that back to you. We have some units that have been in place for better part of 20 years. So they are oftentimes completely gutted and renovated. And when I say gutted, I just simply mean going in and refurbishing, redoing the roof, redoing the exterior, so forth and so on, similar to what you would do for a residential trailer unit.
Okay. My last question, I think, is about the safety of the students actually in the units. I know that, in the last several years, the county has adopted safety measures for various types of situations, and you've discussed how in the event of a natural disaster, the students can be evacuated pretty safely and easily. My question addresses, everybody's worst nightmare. There's a stranger on campus, and how is he going to be prevented from getting into the mobile units?
We actually install card readers at entrance doors on our campuses, and also we install cameras throughout the campus. So unlike whenever we went to school, there were no cameras. And then several years ago, we had maybe 1 or 2 per campus, but now they're spread throughout the campus. So that's one monitoring system. At elementary schools, we typically don't have resource officers, but there is also a training process that staff goes through, and as well as talking with the children on see something, say something. So there are those things that are in place similar to any other location that you would be both at a school or at the mall or anywhere else.
And I'll also add to that as well, the school system has probably over a year ago actually retained a consultant to look at this school as well as many other schools in the system in terms of actually coming to the campus and evaluating the very concerns that you're raising, and then recommending to the Board of Education if any improvements are necessary based on the consultant's report.
That is
correct. I don't know whether
correct.
you have any knowledge of that or not.
Yes, I have not yet seen the report. I do know that there was a security assessment that was done for all of those campuses, and the consultant was making a recommendation to our Senior Director of Security, and then the board would decide what measures would be taken. But as I mentioned, all of our schools have cameras in place. We also have the card readers in place with the badge access similar to what I have here.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Chairman.
Thank you, Kenneth. So I think all the questions that I might have had have already been asked. It's evident that whatever plans Ms. Rory and her colleagues have are frequently outrun by events, as we know within Wake County. But as I look at the standards, all 11 of them, I think we can say, or from my perspective, I think we can say that they've all been met. And at this time, I would entertain a motion if we think we're ready for that.
And Chairman Pritchard, if I could, Senior Planner West had provided a couple draft motions for all of you as typical, just to help you go through the logistics of that. The draft approval, if that is a motion that you choose to make, I would just recommend that if you are supportive of the staff suggested conditions, that you reference that as part of the motion. And if you choose to recommend denial, state which finding you do not believe was met and why.
Thank you, Michelle.
And Michelle, we are approving this for how many years? Or not approving, whatever the period is. What would be the duration of this particular application?
I'm going to let Senior Planner West address that.
So we did not propose, the staff at least did not propose an expiration date for this. The previous special use permit had an expiration date. I think it was 5-year term for that approval. So that was going to expire in June 1st, 2021. So if it would be up to you to recommend potentially an expiration date, council then would decide at their hearing what that would be if they so choose to have an expiration date.
We have had that discussion with the applicant. They did choose to submit the application without a proposed expiration.
Can I ask a couple of more questions of you? Given that this seems to be like now, it has been there for 7 years, and based upon some of the responses I've heard, it doesn't look like this trailer unit is ever going to go away. So is it even possible or conceivable to think of making it into a permanent one versus doing this every 5 years or 4 years or 2 years, whatever the thing is?
I think he asked if we tried to make it permanent.
It sounded like you're wanting to know if the structure could be made permanent or some sort of,
Structure could be made permanent or just grant the approval for perpetuity.
That is something that staff has asked us as part of this application. Wake County is actually the party that does inspections in terms of for classroom space. And so we have reached out to the leadership in the facilities design and construction department for the Wake County school system, and they, in consultations with the county, have looked at this particular space to see if there's any way it could be converted to a permanent space instead of a temporary space. And unfortunately, the answer was that they did not see the ability to be able to convert this to a permanent space, given the challenges of what would need to be done to make it a permanent space instead of a modular space.
Understand. But from a approval point of view, right, of this particular use, my question perhaps is, do we need to put a time limit? Could we just say that this is approved until the applicant decides they no longer need it?
I think in effect that's what the applicant is actually asking, because it's open-ended right now. There is no time limit, there is no sunset clause.
Yeah, you're under no obligation to, even though it is technically a temporary use, you technically do not have to recommend an expiration date. The previous approval did have an expiration date, but it was for 5 years.
Just a question on that. So is there a natural deadline here with just is there a 20-year shelf life on this facility? Are you talking 13 extra years? Or are you thinking about even beyond that of doing improvements and aligning that facility even more? So throwing out that temporary clause, which has me concerned completely.
Yeah.
Is that what we're asking here?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if as you know, to the question Ken was asking earlier about, and you were asking about what is the shelf life of a typical unit, right? When, is it 10 years? Is it 15 years? Is it 5 years? By which time it is no longer usable, if you will, right? So maybe we approve it for whatever the 5-year, 10-year, 15-year is. And beyond that, they have to build brand new one.
If I may respond to that, my comment would be that Morrisville is unique in Wake County in terms of putting this type of requirement in terms of this type of special use permit and making us come for this temporary classroom unit. So it's not something that we have this discussion with many of the other municipalities. And the challenge on this particular modular unit is the fact that if we knew that we had the ability to keep this unit on the campus for a long period of time, then the type of renovations that Ms. Rory was talking about and the type of things to extend it, to use your phrase, shelf life, perhaps could be extended, on a longer period of time. But if we know that it's only going to be there for a certain period of time, then are we going to allocate the dollars to something that's only going to be there for 3 years, or are we going to allocate the dollars somewhere else where we know that we're going to have a 20, 25, 50-year lifespan on it? And so the longer that this particular modular unit can stay on the campus, the more ability there is for the school system in using the taxpayer money in the best possible manner to be able to allocate, refurbishing this particular modular unit.
Okay. If I may propose and maybe ask the board if they are willing to give a 15-year approval for this particular roadmap. Like 7 years, they have no investment plan. I'm hoping that they may have it in the next 7 years. So 10 to 15 years, whatever the board feels comfortable with.
Well, Sanjay, if I may, I think we have to be a little bit careful that we're looking at a very specific special use permit. And we have to also give credit to the Wake County staff who have experts and people who are constantly evaluating how safe schools are, how the structures are. So it would be a Wake County entity that would determine whether or not the classrooms, the temporary classrooms, were still satisfactory or good enough.
I agree. I'm not intruding on that. I'm asking, when we are granting approval, should we grant it with a no end date on it, or should we grant it with like the previous ones have been done for 5 years, or should we do it for 10 years or 15 years? That's what I'm asking.
Understand. So the applicant has asked for an open-ended, and so you're raising the question to the board whether we should make that have some sort of time frame.
Correct. Exactly.
I'm going to jump in first and say that as a veteran who's had the pleasure of seeing Mr. Haywood at least once or twice before, I think the last time around we tried to raise some issues and make it slightly more difficult for passage of this as an encouragement to try and focus attention on trying to get a long-term solution. In other words, more funding basically for more schools. I don't think that was particularly effective. I think, frankly, we just took up a lot of time for the applicants who were kind enough to come before us 5 years ago. But that's just a personal perspective. Vice Chairman Lee, would you like to weigh in on whether you think we should leave this open-ended or introduce a time frame?
Thanks, Peter. Actually, you made a pretty persuasive argument, I think, to just leave it open-ended just now. You changed my mind.
If I could just interject for a moment, Chairman Pritchard, just to let the remote members know, we did run into a technical difficulty on this end. So your videos are not on the screen at this moment. The computer is running some sort of update, but we are still getting audio. So we are going to continue with audio only as opposed to rebooting and restarting and reconnecting everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. So, Kenneth, you had a question, I think, or wanted to make a comment. Member Sack, are you there? Are you unmuted?
No, I'm unmuted. Thank you. I was just following up on the conversation regarding, leaving it open-ended or putting some time constraints on it. As we've learned this year, things can change in a heartbeat. And for that reason, I'd be opposed to granting an open-ended term. I think something along the lines of what we've been using so far seems to work well.
Any other board comments on that topic?
I mean, again, even though I've asked the question, I'm with Ken, right? I do want to put a timeline, but I would like to see the the Wake County school system actually demonstrating that they are making some progress towards replacing these temporary ones with permanent ones. And I don't know whether they can submit a report midway through, but something that we can monitor. Right? We don't want to be in the same situation 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where we are having exactly the same discussion we have had for the last 2 renewals. So I don't want them to go through, them to go through lengthy paperwork, but some way to monitor that they are actually, moving things along.
Tim Toterai, would you like to weigh in on this topic?
Yes, I kind of against the open-ended plan. I would prefer more of a time limit, and part of that is around demonstrating that there is a plan in place that is viable, that can service the need over time. So I think if we're going to have something that is labeled temporary, then that just has that clear definition of when. I wouldn't mind extending it, and once a plan is submitted for either converting that temporary module into full brick and mortar component, or there's a plan to add to it, then you can extend it. But right now, we leave a time limit on it.
Okay, thank you, Tim. So there seems to be I'm ignoring alternate member Roebuck, who's right here in the room with me. Go ahead, Chris.
I like the open-ended, and maybe as a happy medium, I would suggest something like a KPI, a key performance indicator, maybe a status report every 3 or 5 years. I like your capacity reports, your long-term planning. So maybe it's just to assure the condition of the building, the teachers are happy, the students are happy, and instead of having that formal decision, that's the connect to the city and to the community to say the building is still in good condition, there's money going into it, and they're providing some type of update. So that might be a happy medium.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
And we would, on behalf of the school system, I could say that we would have no objection to that condition at all, where basically one of the conditions of the approval is the fact that the school system is on a defined period of time, however many years it is, comes back to either this board or to the town council with basically a state of the Cedar Fork Elementary School. Where are you in terms of capacity? Have you been able to reduce it? Is it still capped? Is it not capped? What efforts have you made to try to find land in western Wake County near Morrisville? Just a status information so that you're aware that you're holding our feet to the fire from the standpoint of reporting back what efforts we're making to try to reduce the capacity here, but it's not necessarily spending the board's time in another 2-hour hearing of another 5 years or another 7 years, like we've been doing with Mr. Pritchard for many years now. So that is certainly a condition. We don't mind coming. I love coming and love talking to you. Love for you to hear me. But if there was a condition was instead that we're providing to you a status of where things are at the campus, I don't see any objection that we would have to that at all.
Thank you, Mr. Haywood. So Chris is not able to propose a motion. So I look to one of the other board members to propose a motion. And I think Chris's compromise and Mr. Haywood's comments on that seem to be a very good way forward.
I think Tim and I are probably struggling with the same thing is, what's our remedy if we notice that from a status point of view, even if we do every 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever they are, that the board is either always behind the curveball or not putting in enough effort? What's our remedy to revoke the approval? There isn't none, right? There isn't any that we can do, is it?
Just to clarify, you're asking what would be the mechanism? So if we did have some sort of metric or report they'd give, how would we revoke the approval if they didn't provide what we wanted to know or hear? Was that the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I think it would partly depend on how that motion was worded. If it was a condition that the school district, for example, return every 3 years to provide a status update, The only requirement would be for them to appear before you or town council and provide that update. If you worded it in another manner, it could trigger something else, but I think the recommendation was just for a general status update to ensure communication.
Yeah, but see,
This is Tim. My that is, you can have a status update, and that's important. I think having that you should have that anyway, but that should be in pursuit of a specific goal at a defined end time, which we're not seeing. So if we're really looking at the ultimate goal of this is to take what is a temporary unit and find a solution for that in a more permanent place, and there should be an end date on that to get to that solution.
yeah. And you have to be able to measure what the success, right? I mean, KPIs mean there is specific parameters you are meeting. It doesn't mean that I can come and give a status report, things are rosy, we are still behind the curve, but that is not actionable, right? That's just somebody giving a verbal update, and we can't do anything about it.
If you are looking for something actionable, I would suggest something other than a status report, something like a time frame or something that said if X metric is not met, you would need to return.
Correct.
So I think we could recommend that the special use permit be revoked if, in the opinion of council, the school board hasn't demonstrated compliance with agreed metrics.
But the standards did not continue to be met or needed to be reheard.
Right.
So just to clarify, so are we then removing the standard H, which is the temporary expansion? Because I think that's the one, I feel very comfortable with folks meeting all of the others and continuing to monitor and meet those over time. The question that I have goes back to, is the ultimate goal of this converting what is a temporary facility into a full-time solution? If that's not, then it's a different conversation. But I wouldn't switch it to a monitor and metric type of thing. The easy answer, in my view, is to continue what you've had, which is you've got a timeline. There's a 5-year temporary use, and at the end of 5 years, you have to have a solution. And if you can't provide a solution, then that is, you come up to that time limit. Maybe 5 years is the wrong number of years. Maybe it's 7, but that's a stake in the ground. If we're saying we're backing off of that, that's a different conversation.
Yeah, and precisely that, right, is we don't want to be in a situation where the school board comes to us like they have done in the last 3 years and ask for renewal every time. At some point, you have to say enough is enough.
So I guess the question then to folks making the case is, what is a reasonable amount of time, do you think, to get to a permanent solution, or is there not one? And if that's the case, then let us know, and we'll kind of move from there.
I think the point here that we need to all understand from the board standpoint is this is not a situation in which the board has not attempted to try to be able to address the overcrowding. The 3 schools are the best demonstration that they have done exactly that. And so while we can put an artificial time period of 5 years, you must go to a permanent space, the community, as the support that you've heard at the very beginning, has indicated that that would be the disastrous effect for the town of Morrisville and its population to be able to require all these students to be assigned to not the closest school, because those are already capped, but to schools that could be a far, far away from where they currently attend. And that's not something that, even though the school is over capacity, anybody in this town has so far indicated that they have any interest in at all.
I'm sorry, you are trying to play an emotional card for the lack of your poor planning. You have to be able to plan for the growth and extra growth. You don't plan for 80% of the growth. If you're consistently showing 166% over capacity, you should be planning for 200% growth, not for 126% growth.
I think that your comments would be better addressed to me if we had not built any schools since 2014. If that had not occurred, then I completely agree. You should be pounding on the table at me and the representatives here for why have you not done anything. But the fact that we have built 3 new elementary schools to serve this region of the county, not in Knightdale, not in eastern Wake County, but here is the best demonstration to show that we are doing everything we can to address the crowding issues in this area of the county.
I have a comment. I agree with a lot of the things that Sanjay and Tim have said about issues with the plan. But this board is really between a rock and a hard place. We're in a rock and a hard place tonight, and we will be whenever we come back again, because the overcrowding is still going to exist. I don't think the county can build enough schools to ease the overcrowding. So is anybody on this board really prepared to vote no, and then our students don't have anywhere to go to school, or they have to be bused, 15, 20 miles away?
Yeah, the answer to that question is no, right? We are going to vote for this in a yes, but we are trying to figure out what could be the right roadmap so that these students don't have to be in trailers forever. At the very least, right? If this is what I was trying to figure out by asking that 7-year growth roadmap. If we know that this 846 means that in the next 7 years, the Morrisville growth is going to lead this to be, let's say, 1,200 students, then we should probably ask Wake County School Board to make it into a permanent structure rather than keep it temporary. And they can do that in the next 10 years if they want to.
I don't disagree with you, Sanjay, but I think the problem is that there's so many external forces on the board that they just can't control, such as the economy, and is there going to be enough money to build these new schools? I mean, that's been a problem in the past. It's going to continue to be a problem. People are still moving down here, and they're going to continue to move down here, because it's a great place to live. So I think, I think the board can do a better job as far as planning, but they have so many external issues that they really are beyond their control. And so we need to account for that, I think.
I'm going to ask Michelle a question, if I may. Michelle, if we were to recommend approval for this to be open-ended and council agreed that it should be open-ended, would council have the ability in the future to revoke the special use permit?
Not unless a condition of the approval wasn't being complied with. The special use permit would then run with the land.
Right.
And just a follow-up to that, Peter. So let's just think for a minute around what you get extra for making it open-ended. So I think there was a comment made that if it was open-ended, it frees the board up to maybe do more investment because they know it's going to be there longer. So can that be articulated in some way? So I can understand having a 5-year window that ties your hands a bit, but if it was open and it was 10, 15 years, what does that then get in return, so to speak, or help with that? What is the benefit of it?
Were you asking about a potential 10 or 15-year deadline?
No. Just so the question, I think everybody's in support of moving it forward. The question on the table is, do you have a time limit or do you make it open-ended? My question is, if it is open-ended, what is the benefit to all parties or the reduce of risk? I think what we're saying that I've heard is it helps us get out of administration and meeting again in 5 years for another 2 hours. Is there a more compelling reason to have an open-ended timeline?
I think think I follow your logic, but I don't see that there is any more compelling reason.
So if there's none, and the only thing that we get is having to go through the hassle of trying to figure out, well, how do we revoke it or whatever, why not just leave it as it is?
Just for clarification, you indicated leave it as it is. Are you suggesting another 5-year extension?
Exactly. I mean, if we're looking for extension, everybody's in favor of that, I believe. The question is whether you have an open-ended or a term time, whatever that term is. Is there any benefit other than a lack of paperwork for having an open-ended? Anybody can really weigh in on that. I don't see one other than lack of administration.
If I turn that around, Tim, what's the benefit of having them come back in 5 years' time?
I think that's a good point. I think that there you have a little bit of teeth to reevaluate and to potentially deny if there's no movement, or to look at other options. It's opportunity cost.
I think, personally speaking, I think it's more valuable to get a formal presentation to the council from the Wake County School Board on how they meet certain key performance indicators. Use Chris's idea. I think that's a more useful discussion than putting these folks through this special use permit again.
So are you suggesting that we word the motion to say something to the effect that we approve it subject to maybe the board working with our Morrisville's education board to define and agree upon key performance indicators, and they will meet those key performance indicators over the next whatever 5, 10, 15 year time frame?
Or maybe just a status.
I mean, we can't find those. Sorry, go ahead.
Chris has a comment.
Or maybe just a status update, either one. You know, if there was some discussion whether performance indicators was the correct word versus a status report from the city, for the city.
And I think if you were going to be crafting a motion recommending that something be based on certain KPIs, that you would want to know what those KPIs were as you were drafting the motion, as opposed to potentially delegating that to someone else, because it may or may not, in the end, be what you intended. I think it gives everyone more certainty as to what that recommendation is. There was also a conversation early on, I can't remember which member suggested it, about potentially tying some sort of time frame to the life of the unit. I think the first special use permit, Brad can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was granted in 2014. So we're 6 years into it with a potential life of 14. I don't know if that could play into some sort of time frame as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was me who suggested that. So I don't want them to come for status reports. They can certainly submit status report, but to me that's useless. It doesn't add any value. I would, if I have to go with anything, I would go with another 7 years, which kind of limits to the time frame of 14 years of that particular unit, right? Give them 7 years maybe, 6 plus 6, maybe 8 years, right? That kind of gives them enough time to use their 7-year CIP to figure out where to make investments.
Yeah, I think just let me interject here for a second. Tying it to something like a CIP would be better than just making up a number. So, I mean, they have a 7-year CIP. that would seem at least reasonable to propose if a timeline was proposed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so if we say that, hey, we approve it subject to for a 7-year period, and we would like to see CIP numbers. I don't know how to you phrase it, but actionable plan to go along with the CIP. Lee, if you have better words, please chime in. Again.
Michelle, a question for you again. I believe we have another advisory committee which is focused on schools and talking to Wake County. So I think it's entirely possible that if council listens to these discussions and we in turn talk to some councillors, that there may be a win-win solution that comes out in the actual when the special use permit goes before council. So I just want to throw that out there. I think we may not come up with the exact resolution that the council will have when it comes before council, but some of the discussion that we've had tonight I think might be useful in forming the actual outcome that council has. So I'm going to suggest then that one of the members makes a motion, and we'll see if we can work around that.
Let me just caution and just to clarify that any discussions about this particular special use permit case, you have to be careful what you discuss, the ex parte communication standard that the state sets. I mean, we have to
Good reminder.
Respect that.
So I would look to Sanjay or Lee or Kenneth or Tim.
I mean, do we feel like 7 years is a good starting point for this? It sounds like there's some consensus around.
Yes, 7 years was the number tied to their CIP plan.
Right. I mean, it feels like that's getting close to the life of the building. I mean, there may be some confluence around that from sort of multiple angles. Something there's support for that in general.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to give it a shot, and you guys can shoot it down or agree to it. Matt, Brad, do I need to read this entire Word document you sent out?
Just the top part.
Oh, just the top part. Yeah.
There's two separate sections, one per approval.
Got it. I hereby move to recommend approval of ordinance 2020-205-0 to the Morrisville Town Council approving a special use permit renewal for the continuation of the Wake County Public School System Cedar Fork Elementary Mobile Classroom at 1050 Town Hall Drive, Wake County, PIN 0745795775, quasi-000188-2020, based on the findings provided in the application package and the additional evidence and temporary testimony provided by applicant at the meeting, subject to the following conditions. The approval is recommended for a period of 7 years, with the caveat that Wake County School System will present a status and a actionable plan demonstrating investment and removal of the temporary structure in the 5th year of from the approval of this application.
So just to recap, it sounds like you are recommending approval of the special use permit for 7 years, but on the 5th year of that approval, or at least by the 5th year of that approval, Wake County Public Schools needs to present some information regarding how they're going to add capacity, or I can't remember if you said brick or mortar or additional capacity.
They have to have a plan they have to present a plan in the 5th year to replace the temporary one with either a permanent one or, adding capacity somewhere else, right? In other words, in the 5th year, they have to present a plan to either get rid of the temporary structure in one shape or form.
And your intent is that if they do not provide that information, then the permit would expire on the 7th year, or?
Yeah, the board in the 7th year can decide you have not met the conditions of the approval, and therefore they need not grant any more extension if the board ever comes back to us.
And one thing we might want to just clarify is that this would start at the end of the current special use permit. So it does, this current one doesn't expire until June 1st, 2020. I'm sorry, June 1st, 2021. And so that new renewed 7-year period, from what I understand from your motion, would start after this current one expires, correct?
Correct. And that, so 25 years from there, so it will be 2026. They should have a plan, a actionable plan, right? Not just a verbal plan like they are presented today. They have to show a actionable plan in the 5th year to get rid of the structure by the end of the 7th year.
Member Akura, I think we're understanding the dialogue, but if you could restate the motion for the record, that would be appreciated.
Before he does that, do we need to put like a date other than 2016 where they're going to, do that?
So, sorry, I was just stating 2026 based upon the 5 year from 2021. They can certainly come back even earlier, come before the council, before that time frame. So you are asking, should we put the years in the approval statement, in the motion?
Not the years necessarily, but a date, a year from, 5 years from today, something like that.
Yes. I can put it in, say, 5 years from the date this new approval will go into effect, which will be June 1st, 2021.
That sounds fine.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
I think it's clearer if you go with if you specify June 2026.
You can do that too.
Okay, June 2026. Yep. Okay. Let me try one more time.
So we don't need the first part. It's just your added conditions.
Conditions? Okay. Thank you. So the two conditions that I laid out. Number one, this approval is to be granted for a total duration of 7 years, effective from the end of effective from June 2021. And condition number two is the Wake County school system will come back with the status, will provide the status and an actionable plan to remove the temporary structure by June 2026.
And if I may, Sanjay, you might want to use some of the phrases from the sheet that we were given on section H. Definite plans for the permanent expansion of classroom space or alternative means of meeting growing classroom needs.
Sure. Yeah. Do you want me to read that one more time? I'll say the second condition one more time.
Please do.
Let me get there quickly. Okay. To comply, condition number 2, to comply with section 4.4.5.b.4 in the UDO, Wake County Public School System will come back to this board and the town council by June 2026 with a definitive plan that is executable for the permanent expansion of classroom space or alternative means of meeting growing classroom needs and eliminate the need for temporary mobile classrooms.
Did you get most of that, Marty? Would you like to read it back? From
Expiration of June 1st, 2021. And the second was that the school system would return to town council with status and a plan for future plans June 2026.
By June 2026. They can surely come with a plan sooner than that, but the latest date they have to come and present a actionable plan. I wouldn't just say plan for the sake of plan. An actionable plan by June 2026 to replace the temporary mobile classroom with a permanent expansion of classroom space or alternate means of meeting growing classroom needs.
You got that. Thank you, Sanjay. Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
So second by Kenneth. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, then I'll ask Marty to do a roll call.
Member Achara,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Langston,
Aye.
Member Sack,
Aye.
Member Toterai,
Aye.
and Chairman Pritchard.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So, thank you, Mr. Haywood. Thank you, Miss Rory.
Thank you.
And Mr. Thank you very much for coming. I know you enjoy it so much. It looks like you're going to put it on your diary for a few years' time.
There you go.
And just as in closing, I do not have children at school age anymore, but I salute and respect and thank all the members of Wake County School Board.
Thank you.
For what you're doing now and always. I mean, it's a really, really tough job. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I second that. And even though we have been hard on you, we appreciate all the work you do to educate our kids. So thank you very much.
All right. And the applicants here, I don't believe you can see them on video. Can you, members? It's a one-way, right?
Yeah.
So I can tell you that Miss Rory is smiling underneath her mask. Hey, Brad, have you been standing long enough? Or do you
Yeah, I think if you want to do a 5-minute break, or we can continue to finish out the meeting, it's up to you.
personally, I think
We're just about done.
Yeah.
so. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, if I can find it, which is staff comments. Maybe we'll just take a 1-minute break while these good people manage to escape, go home to their families.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brad, you can hum or dance or
Sorry?
you can hum or sing or dance or something.
Yeah, if we had some moon music or something, that'd be great.
Okay.
Elevator music.
Brad, can you scroll down to the newsletter? It's a PDF.
So I think we can move on to 7, staff comments.
Okay. As Brad's bringing up that newsletter, just to start, first off, I'd like to welcome our new code enforcement officer. Some of you may have remembered John Bernard. He was with the village for many, many years, actually retired at the end of December. So our planner too, Chris Lawson, has been doing double duty as the town's code enforcement officer since that time. But I'm pleased to announce that a few weeks ago, Anna Willis did start and assume those duties. So she is the town's new code enforcement officer. She actually lived in Morrisville for a while when she was younger, spent most of her life in Pennsylvania, but is really excited to be back in Morrisville again. And she's a graduate of East Carolina University and previously worked in Pitt County as well. So we're excited to have her and want to just share that good news with all of you. Definitely appreciate everything that John did with us over the years. Those of you that know him know he doesn't like a lot of fanfare, so he retired quietly. In terms of new development applications that have been submitted, we did have one new development application submitted in June, and that was for what is being referred to as Wake Competition Center South. It's a subdivision and construction plan, so just south of the Wake Competition Center. Really, the project just involves putting in some infrastructure with a road and subdividing off lots. The rush hour urban air, which I think we've mentioned before in prior newsletters, they are looking to build on one of those lots, but users for the rest aren't known. So really just looking to subdivide the property and get the infrastructure in with that Wake Competition Center South application. There were no new administrative approvals in June, and at their last meeting, the town council did approve the major site plan for 910 Church Street that the board had previously reviewed as well. And that is all I have, Chairman.
Thank you, Michelle. So, board comments. Lee, any comments?
No. Thank you.
Sanjay.
Just a quick question for Michelle. Do we know what's the status of all the road expansion plans we had for 2020, given what's happening with COVID now, and especially the Morrisville, the one from Davis Drive to 40 on both sides of the railway line?
You were talking about road improvements on Davis Drive. I'm sorry, I was having a hard time catching you. You were talking about Morrisville Carpenter between Davis Drive and NC 54?
Yeah, I thought that was supposed to start in 2020, right? And then the from 54 all the way to the 40 was supposed to start next year? Make them 4 lanes.
I will give a very general answer, but I do know that our long-range planner, Ben Howell, is on the line as well, so he could correct me if I misspeak and provide some additional information. But yes, that was planned to go forward. With COVID, there were some issues with the funding, but I believe we have gone back and talked to NCDOT, and there might be some progress happening on that soon. But Ben, if you wouldn't mind chiming in.
Yes. So Morrisville Carpenter Road, as Michelle mentioned, is currently on hold from NCDOT due to their cash flow issues. We're not allowed to bid the project out or start construction on that project. As far as the other DOT projects that you mentioned around town, the Aviation Parkway project had actually been delayed prior to the COVID-19. And so that one is not supposed to start construction now till after 2025 or 2026. But McCrimmon Parkway grade separation and the NC 54 widening are both continuing to move forward because they are funded by bonds through NCDOT. So both those projects, while they have been delayed a little bit, are expected to start construction sometime in fall or winter of 2021. And then McCrimmon Parkway widening itself has been delayed a little bit, but I've not heard when that one may start construction. So for the most part, the projects are still moving forward. They've just, several of them have been put on pause, but there are several others that are still moving forward.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you, Michelle.
Kenneth, any questions or comments for?
No comments.
Tim?
No comment.
No comments.
All right. I have no comments.
Actually, I just have one question I just thought of. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Lee.
So at the intersection of Davis Drive and Morrisville Carpenter and over on Chapel Hill Road, just prior to Perry Parkway, are 2 very similar brick structures to be built. What are they?
I'll take that. This is Ben Howell. Those are being constructed by, if they're what I think they are, it's a part of the Town of Cary's Connected Vehicles project. They have received funding through Campo for a Connected Vehicles pilot project, and part of that is putting in infrastructure to allow the traffic signals to actually converse with cars. For now, it's primarily going to be used by public safety vehicles and possibly transit vehicles. But I believe that's probably what you're seeing being constructed. It's either that, or if you're talking about the large brick walls, that's part of the town's Gateway project, Gateway signage project.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Do we need to address items 9 or 10? Do we have everybody's applications in for those of us who expire at the end of August?
Yeah, so just a reminder, if you do have a term expiring, the application deadline is tomorrow. That is a hard deadline, so if you do plan on reapplying and you do not have your application in, please get that to the town clerk.
How do we know if our term is expiring?
I could look that up and let you know. You should have received notification if your term was coming up.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
So, and I'm sorry, I was having a hard time figuring out who was speaking there.
That was Ken. And I haven't received any notification that it is.
Okay. Okay, yeah, your term goes to August 31st, 2022.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Sanjay and me.
Yes. Chairman Langston, Vice Chairman, Chairman Pritchard, Vice Chairman Langston are the only terms coming up.
And Sanjay?
December 31st, 2022.
I have an old list. That was when he was an alternate member. Right. So we'll entertain a motion on item 11.
I move to adjourn. This is Lee.
Do I have a second?
I second.
I second.
I think that was Kenneth. So, Marty, you get to perform again, please.
Aye. I'm not sure if you call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
You.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.